crazy to think that we've come to the end of the PS4 generation with the arrival of the PS5, as it feels like just yesterday when I got my PS4 Knack and Killzone Shadowfall and had like a week off work to play the thing. It was fantastic. This has been one of Sony's best consoles, up there with the PS2 and the PS1 in my opinion, as some of the finest gaming consoles around. So now I thought would be a great time to take a look back at all of the amazing titles on PlayStation 4 and try and come up with my top 25 best PS4 games of the generation. So in at number 25 is Wolfenstein The New Order, and this was the very first Wolfenstein game of this like rebooted version, and I have to say it's one of the early PS4 games that I got that I felt like, yes, this is next gen, this was worth me getting the PS4 for, as I had an absolute blast playing this one. And I think to this day it's still my favourite of the three mainline ones that they've released so far. And with Bethesda being brought by Microsoft, I hope that they will still put the Wolfenstein games on PlayStation, as it would be a shame to lose this franchise. Either way though, I still have this awesome first entry in this rebooted BJ Blazkowicz storyline. It was just such a fun first-person shooter that harkened back to the old-school days with health packs that you could pick up and loads of weapons that you could carry and things like that. That just made it a really fun and kind of nostalgic experience, but it still felt new and fresh because the handling and the gunplay was just so sweet, and I just really enjoyed it. I liked all the little challenges that you had within the game's menu as well, so you could do loads of different kill challenges and stuff, and the trophy challenges as well, they were pretty cool too. It was just a great storyline as well that I wasn't really expecting. It was quite deep and emotional at times, and BJ Blazkowicz himself was actually a really cool character. He wasn't just this over-the-top action guy, he actually had depth to him, and I was really impressed with the whole package, to be honest, and that is why it's my number 25 pick. Number 24. So that goes to The Evil Within, another Bethesda game. This one was made by Shinji Mikami, who did the original Resident Evil games, and I have to say this was a really cool introduction to a new franchise that has cropped up. Admittedly, there has only been 2 games so far, but I am hopeful that they will eventually do a 3rd game. So this was just a really cool Resident Evil 4 style survival horror game, and I just really enjoyed it. It was a cool little game. It wasn't the most scariest of titles, but it was a bit freaky, and that's kind of all I need with these sort of horror games, to be honest. It very much felt like a spiritual successor to Resident Evil 4 at times, and it was just a fun game to play. And there was this one trophy for completing it on Akumu difficulty, which was basically like a one-hit death sort of run, and it was really fucking challenging, but it was really cool to just slowly work my way through it and get it, and it's probably one of the toughest platinums I've got for PlayStation 4. So yeah, it's definitely one that I don't think many people have played. It was kind of a sleeper hit. It did get a sequel, but that one just wasn't quite as cool and as good as this one in my opinion, and that is why Evil Within 1 makes it to my list. Number 23. Oddworld New and Tasty. So New and Tasty was a remake of the original Abe's Odyssey from the PlayStation 1 era, and I always loved this game back in the day when I was playing it on the PS1. So when I heard that they were remaking it for the PS4, I was over the moon, and I was really excited to get this game, and it was one of the first titles I brought through Limited Run to actually get it on a retail boxed disc version, because I just really wanted to have it in my collection properly and not just digital. It was a really faithful recreation of the original game, and it just looked even more fantastic on the PS4 because all of the pre-rendered backgrounds that used to be on the PS1 were now fully 3D, and even though it still played from that side-on perspective, it was just such a great game. Once a classic, always a classic in my opinion. Number 22. Resident Evil 2 RE2 remake, whatever you want to call it. Resident Evil 2, the remake on PS4. This was a really good remake that played in the more modern sort of Resi 4 sort of over-the-shoulder camera style. So it was a little bit disappointing not to have the remake in the same style as RE remake, which was more faithful to the original, while adding some new sections to the game. This was still a really fun remake, and it was really cool to explore Raccoon City again as it starts to fall apart due to the zombie outbreak. Overall, this game was just really fun, and I really enjoyed going for the platinum journey with this game because it was just really cool to do all the various playthroughs that I needed to do, along with all the speed runs and no healing and all that sort of stuff. It was a really fun challenge. It was a shame that some of the sections were cut out or just rejigged, especially the intro bit. You weren't in the city for very long before you got to a police station. That was probably one of my biggest complaints with this game, because I really enjoyed that first bit in the original game, and although you did sort of see it later on, it just didn't feel as good when you see it halfway through the game instead of at the beginning. But overall, this was just a fantastic remake, and Capcom really did put a lot of effort into this title, and it definitely shows. Such a fucking classic. Capcom were pretty much on a roll with Resident Evil this generation, and this is one of their highlights for sure. Number 21. Continuing the run of remakes that I seem to have in this list is Shadow of the Colossus. Now, I'll admit, when I got this game back on PS2, I was so hyped for it because I loved Ico, but when I finally got to play this one, I was kind of a little bit disappointed with it. And I think in my first playthrough I sort of stopped after probably the 5th or 6th Colossi, and I didn't touch the game for about a year until I finally decided to just finish it, and I did enjoy it when I completed it. However, I always felt like Ico was the better game. So when this game came to PlayStation Plus for free, I decided to just give it a go, as I heard they improved quite a lot of things, and it wasn't just the visuals that had been enhanced. So after firing it up, I absolutely fell in love with this game, and I really, really enjoyed this version. It just cut a lot of the bullshit out, because most of the things I remember from the original game was just flailing around constantly and then losing the stamina because I was constantly flailing and couldn't move, and it just didn't seem as bullshit and just as annoying in this one. I'm pretty sure they just made it a bit easier, if anything. So it was just a more fun game and a more fun experience for me to go through second time around, and it's just, quite frankly, amazing. Number 20. Doom. The Doom reboot on PS4 was absolutely fucking balls to the wall mayhem, gore, blood, violence, and just awesomeness. This was a really, really fun game. It didn't really take itself too seriously. There wasn't much of a storyline at all. It was just non-stop gunslinging action, and for me, it's just brilliant. It's so easy to just pick up and play, but hard to master, and each battle is just really frantic and chaotic. And it just felt like every fight I was in was like a multiplayer match, as you constantly had to be moving around the room, jumping and turning and strafing and shooting. It was just unlike any other first-person shooter out there, to be honest. You didn't really have the whole cover and popping out sort of thing. You were just constantly moving as if it was a multiplayer match, and that just made it so much more exciting and fun to go around. And sure, it kind of wore a little thin towards the end, but what an awesome ride it was, and well worthy of a place in my list. Number 19. Now, along with Abe, Crash Bandicoot was another gaming mascot that I just never thought we would see again, especially on PS4. So when they announced the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, a remake of the first 3 Naughty Dog games, and arguably the best Crash Bandicoot games, ever made, I was just so excited and so down for this. This was a day one purchase from me, and these 3 games were perfectly remastered, and they were just so much fun to go through. Even though it was pretty much exactly the same game I'd already played, they are just classics, and it was just so much fun to go back and play them. And they were really challenging as well, especially Crash Bandicoot 1. That one's just too hard for its own good, in my opinion. But all 3 of them are excellent. 2 still remains as my favourite, as I think that's just pure Crash Bandicoot, whereas Crash 3 Warped tries to do a lot of things, like all the vehicle levels, and it kind of takes away from the pure Crash Bandicoot running, jumping and spinning experience. So for me, Crash Bandicoot 2 is definitely the best one, but all 3 are amazing in their own right, and this was just a brilliant game. It was like top of the charts for fucking ages, and it's well deserving of that, because it's just a fantastic return to form for the orange marsupial. Welcome back, Crash Bandicoot. We have sorely missed you. Number 18. Alien Isolation. So this is perhaps one of my biggest surprises, my biggest surprising gaming experience on this generation, because I really wasn't expecting that much from this movie licensed game, especially after the mess that was Colonial Marines. But Alien Isolation just surpassed all my expectations, and this is a fantastic first-person survival-esque horror game, as it's just fantastic. So it's basically just you playing as Ripley's daughter against one alien, and that may sound a bit simple and easy, but my god, it just makes it even more terrifying as the necromorph stalks you throughout the ship, and you just hear it crawling in all the vents and coming up and around you. This game is just so intense at times, especially when it bursts into a room and it's looking for you and you're just hiding under a table praying to God that it doesn't find you and just gut you there and then. It's just so much fun. It does get a bit weird towards the end. It kind of loses its steam somewhat as more aliens come out and you start fighting the AI robot people, but it is such a cool experience, and it's one of the most genuinely frightening games that you can play on PS4. I wish that they had updated it for VR to include virtual reality support, because playing this with a headset on would just take it to a whole other level. I don't know why Sega never did it, because my god, I would have even brought a VR version separately for another 40 quid, because this game just begs to be played in VR, because I just know it would be fantastic. But even without VR, it is still an excellent game and well worth a purchase, because it's definitely going cheap now. I just wish they would have made a sequel already. Come on, Sega, you know you wanna. Number 17. Bloodborne. So Bloodborne was perhaps one of the first exclusive first party games for PS4 that I felt made the console worthwhile, and I had never actually played Demon or Dark Souls before, so this type of game was just brand new to me. But I really liked this one because it seemed quite fast paced, kind of a little bit of Devil May Cry in there, as you can jump in really quick, hack and slash your way out of there, whereas from the looks of trailers from Dark Souls and Demon Souls, it's a bit more slower and technical as you have a sword and shield, and this one was just fantastic. It definitely kicked my ass and was quite a challenge to get through, especially trying to get the platinum, but it was just so cool. It looked great, the visuals were cool, the environments were really atmospheric, the sort of Victorian London-esque sort of places, and just, walking down a road and just seeing a normal enemy standing there was terrifying, because you just knew he could just kill you if you did the wrong thing. One wrong move and you're dead in this game, and it just makes it all the more terrifying because you know you're at risk of losing all your stuff if you just fuck up. And it was just a great experience, one that I hadn't experienced before. I haven't not played the other games, so that's probably why it rates a bit higher than some other people might say. But yeah, Bloodborne was just a cool game, and I really enjoyed it. Number 16. Until Dawn. Now, Until Dawn is a sort of interactive, sort of almost like a Telltale sort of Walking Dead sort of game, but you have much more greater sense of freedom and movement, and it played out like one of those teen slasher movies from the 90s, and I absolutely love those. Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, they're my jam, and I absolutely love them. So I was really chuffed when this game came out. And like Bloodborne, it was one of those early PS4 exclusives that just made it feel like the console was worth getting and worth owning, because you had these really cool games. And this one was just so much fun. It took place over the course of a night as you try and survive until dawn, and you got to play as various teams who would all interact with each other and cross paths along the way, and your choices would have the butterfly effect, so you do something, it might affect someone else later on, or it might end up sealing your own fate. And if one of your people die, you just move to the next one until you eventually run out of them if you play really badly. And it was a fun sort of experience. It was quite intriguing, the storyline, to figure out what was actually going on and who was behind it all, because there was that sort of bit of murder mystery to it. And it was just a great game, and I really hope we get a proper sequel soon. Number 15, Uncharted Lost Legacy. So this was the first of what I thought would have been many by now spin-offs to Uncharted after Uncharted 4 wrapped up Nathan Drake's storyline. So in this game you get to play as Chloe Fraser, who starred in the second game, as well as the fourth and possibly third, I think, and Nadine, who was the sort of villain in Uncharted 4 that just kicked Drake's ass all the way through. And while it wasn't starring the characters I would have liked Nate's brother and Sully, and then Charlie Cutter to be with Chloe instead of Nadine, but it was still a really cool story and a really fun game that sort of harkened back to some of the best bits of Uncharted, as it recreated like the train section and loads of other little sequences, and it also introduced the first sort of glimpse of Naughty Dog's wide open sort of side mission-y sort of sections to games that they later did in Last of Us 2, as you had this big open area to explore and find a load of coins to solve this riddle on this door. So you could do that if you wanted to or not, but it was just a fun adventure. It was kind of short, about 8 hours or so, but what a ride it was while it lasted. It was still the same old sort of Uncharted gameplay, but for me, in many ways, this is kind of more fun than Uncharted 4, because it doesn't have as many of those slow-paced walking around sections, so it's much more action-orientated. There are a couple of them, but because the runtime is so short, they don't drag on as long as they did in Uncharted 4. It's just a really fun game, and I hope we get to see another sort of Uncharted spin-off in the future. Number 14, Detroit Become Human. So, I loved Heavy Rain on the PS3, but I never actually played Beyond Two Souls. So this was my second David Cage Quantic Dream game, and I have to say it's my favourite, as I just think he's gotten so much better at telling a story by this point, and this was just a much more well put together game, I felt, than Heavy Rain was. While Heavy Rain was a cool story, I actually really liked this one. The three characters that you got to play as throughout the adventure were all interesting in their own rights. You had the cop, who was like trying to deal with the dilemma of being an android, but also trying to have that human side and realizing that he's hunting down his kind. You had Kara, the sort of servant robot, who ended up breaking the protocol and becoming human almost, to save the little girl that she lived with. And then you had, who was the other one? I can't remember his name, but he became like the leader of the robots, to sort of give them their freedom. And it was just a really cool tale, and watching how they intertwined with each other was just really fun. And it was just great, and it looked so good. There were so many cool moments in it that just made it really fun to play. And I got the platinum in this, so I played it through multiple times, and I had fun every time just seeing what differences in the story I could do from the choices I would make. And I'm definitely looking forward to their next game, whatever that may be. Number 13, The Last Guardian. So the PS4 was full of surprises throughout the generation, from Abe's Odyssey to Crash Bandicoot returning, but perhaps the biggest surprise I found was that The Last Guardian finally released. My god, this was a long wait for Fumito Ueda's third game in the Ico shared universe, shall we say, and for me it kind of didn't disappoint. I would always say that The Last Guardian was a flawed masterpiece, but it is still a masterpiece nonetheless. This was a very troubled development to make this game, hence why it took so long to come out, skipping the PS3 entirely. It was just an amazing experience to play through, and Trico, the giant guardian dog bat bird thing that you travelled with, was just a really cool character, and it was so much fun to see the boy and the bird's relationship grow over the course of the game, as well as your relationship with Trico as well, because you were the one trying to order him around to get him to do things, and at times he was a bit of a pain not jumping where you wanted to, but he would just turn, look at you, tilt his head and stare at you with those cute little eyes of his, and you would kind of forgive him for most of it. It was absolutely just amazing, so breathtaking. There was so many cool jaw-dropping moments with this game, like when all the structures collapse and you fall and Trico catches you with his tail, or when you're fighting the guards and he's just there saving you. It's such an epic game, but yes, it was very rough. It wasn't as polished as some of the other titles on this list, but for me, that's kind of part of its charm. It's definitely, like I said, a flawed masterpiece, and I really would recommend people playing this game. Just have some patience, because it can be a little bit glitchy and a little bit stubborn when you want to try and move quickly. But wow, what a game. What a game. Number 12, Uncharted 4. So, when you do a list of the top best PS4 games, Uncharted 4 doesn't even make the top 10, you know that the games to come are going to be something pretty special indeed, because Uncharted 4 is a masterpiece. It is an amazingly well-made game, but for me, I don't know whether it was as fun and as good as Uncharted 1, 2 and 3 on the PS3, because there was just something missing, whether it was Amy Hennig's writing, or maybe just the fact that there wasn't as many set pieces in this game. I don't know. It was a great adventure and I really did enjoy it, and the set pieces it did have, like that Jeep chase where you're dragged in the mud and then you're on the bike, and that one when you're falling down the building and the battle nearly crushes you, and then the escape at the end, they were all cool, but there was just so many more of them in the other games that this one just felt a lot slower. There was a lot of walking around and talking, and I hated all the elements that it borrowed from The Last of Us, because it just felt more like The Last of Us at times and less like Uncharted, and that's a problem some of the Naughty Dog games have when they cross franchises like that. But it is a fantastic game, and I really found myself enjoying it when I go back and play it every now and then, but it's just not as good as the other games on this list, I'm sorry. There was a few bits that I found annoying, like the boat bit when you have to find all the treasures on the islands to get to where you need to go. It just wasn't that great, but yeah, it's still a good game, but for me, I think the other Uncharted were better than this. But for PS4, it's still a fantastic title, and is why it's there on my list, just not in the top 10. Number 11, and just missing out on the top 10, is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order from EA. Jesus Christ, after the mess that was the Star Wars Battlefront games with all their microtransactions and toxic bullshit, this game, Jedi Fallen Order, was a breath of fresh air, because it was a solo, single-player, story-driven experience that was just fantastic. It looked absolutely amazing, and it played just as amazing. It was kind of like a Bloodborne, Demon Souls, Dark Souls light, and the combat was just so satisfying. You really did feel like the Jedi, as they would say in the trailers. It was just a really cool game, and it was actually better than the movies. The story in this game of a hidden Jedi who's trying to survive during the era where Darth Vader has hunted them all down was just fantastic, and a much more interesting story than what the movie trilogy came up with. It's just a brilliant game. It was just so much fun to play and just go through it and unlock all the powers. It was kind of like a Metroidvania thing in that respect, as you couldn't get through certain areas of certain worlds that you travelled to until you got certain abilities. So then you could go back and explore even more of the area and uncover even more treasures and secrets. It was just an absolute blast, and some of the moves that you could do, you could run along the walls, you could throw your lightsaber, you could get a dual wielding one, you could get two separate ones in your hand. It was just so many things you could do. All the force powers were really fun, and it was just a blast, and I can't wait for the sequel because this was just fucking brilliant, man. Number 10, Streets of Rage 4. Oh my god, this actually happened this generation, guys. Streets of Rage 4 was finally made and finally came out. Streets of Rage 2 is one of my favourite beat-em-ups and favourite games of all time because it's just so much fun, and one that you can just go back to and just play through again, and it never gets old. So Streets of Rage 4 had a lot to live up to, especially after 3 kind of disappointed. And at first I didn't think this was as good as 2, but the more I play this game, the better I get at it, the more I fall in love with it, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. And for me, this was one of the best platinum journeys I went on to get that shiny trophy, as it really did force me to get good at the game and learn its controls, learn its combo system and fighting mechanics. And once I did that, it was just absolutely fantastic. I don't think the music's as good, and there are some more bullshit and cheap moments in this game compared to 2, but overall it is still a fantastic beat 'em up experience, and it's better than River City Girls, and I didn't think that was possible because I really did like that game, but this just shits all over it. It shows who is the daddy in this genre, and it's definitely Streets of Rage, because Streets of Rage 4 is just fucking awesome. I've never played it in 4 players, but I've played it in 2 player, and it's absolutely fantastic, and I think it'd be even better with 4 players, but unfortunately the online's a bit dead in this. But it's still a great game to play solo or with friends locally. There's just so many different ways to play, and there's so many characters to unlock, and it's just so much fun. I wish there was more than 12 stages though, but I'm hopefully gonna get that DLC pretty soon. Streets of Rage 4, brilliant. Number 9, Astrobots Rescue Mission. If ever there was a game that could put a smile on anyone's face, it would have to be Astrobot, because this game is just pure joy from start to finish, and it's one of the best VR experiences you can have on PS4. So it's a pretty simple to look at Mario style 3D platformer, but what makes this so unique is the VR aspect to it. So you are the camera basically, and you're watching the little Astrobots run around the level, and you can move and look around the environment to see hidden areas, because certain pillars might be in your way, but if you move and look around it you can see it. And there's just so many cool ways it does VR, as well as the controller as well, using the touchpad and the motion controls in it to fling out shuriken or pull grapple hooks. There was just so many cool little things to do in this, and it's one of the reasons why I'm really excited to see what they've done for the Astrobot game that launches with PS5, because this was just fantastic. It's definitely one of those games that just makes buying VR worth it, because I got to experience this game, and this is one of the best VR games out there on any system in my opinion, because it's just so much fun. It's what games are all about, just pure fun, pure simple basic platforming fun, and just wholesome goodness. It's just such a brilliant game. Definitely buy this if you've got VR, you won't regret it. Number 8, God of War. So this franchise kind of sort of got a soft reboot this generation, and it kind of went a bit Last of Us in that it gave Kratos a child to look after as he journeyed through a new setting of Norse mythology instead of the ancient Greece, and it was a breath of fresh air because it really did reignite and rebirth the franchise, as it was just a fantastic game. It looked amazing, of course, being a Sony first party experience, but the gameplay was just so much fun too. The combat system was reworked. You had a giant axe that you wielded, and you could throw it like Force Hammer, and it would just find its way back to you. You would later get some special weapons from the original games, but it was just so much fun. The combat in this game is just brilliant. It's brutal, it's gory, and it's just fantastic. My main gripe with it was the boss fights weren't as epic as they were in the original. The first boss fight you have at your house is excellent, but none of them really tops that, and for me, that's what a God of War game is all about. Number 7. Resident Evil 7. So this is the second franchise to get 2 entries in my PS4's greatest game list, and Resident Evil 7 was a huge departure from the norm of Resident Evil games, as this was first person, making the horror even more personal. But the best way to play this game was through PlayStation VR, because that made this the best VR experience you could have on the console, because it was just so fucking terrifying. So this one played a little bit differently to the others. You start off looking for your girlfriend, your wife, I think, who's gone missing, and you get a phone call and you sort of go to this sort of abandoned house, and you find that there's a load of residents in there, evil ones at that. And this family just hunts you down throughout the game. The dad, Jack, will just chase you, kind of Nemesis style, through the house. And it's just absolutely terrifying. And it was just a really, really great VR experience. It just made it so cool. You could go up to windows and then peek your head through and look around and see things that you would never see playing it normally. And when the enemies get right up in your face, it's just terrifying. It was just great. It was so much fun in VR that I just had an absolute blast playing it. And I can't recommend it any higher, really, because, you know, it's just a perfect game for VR. When you play it normally, it's still great, but it doesn't have that special feeling to it. You definitely need to experience this in VR. I played it in VR first, then went back, did it normally for my second playthrough, but the first playthrough, I'll never forget it because it was just fantastic. It does kind of lose its footing a bit once you leave the house, and later on when you get onto the ship, it kind of turns into that old school crappy sort of Resident Evil with these just boring ooze enemies that you have to fight. But for those first few hours inside the house, running around, and then in the garden, and then that saw bit where you go into like this house and you have to solve this puzzle in this room, it was just brilliant, and I really enjoyed it. And if it didn't have that weakest final act, I probably would have put this higher, but as it stands, this is the best VR experience you can have, and it's one of the best horror games on the system. Number 6, and just missing out on the top 5, is Days Gone, another first-party PlayStation exclusive. This time it's an open world adventure set in a post-apocalyptic world where a virus outbreak has occurred and everyone's turned into zombies. Well, almost everyone, except for Deacon St. John, a biker. So it's kind of like Sons of Anarchy meets The Walking Dead. And this was just an awesome game. It wasn't as polished and well made as other PlayStation exclusives, but this for me was a real diamond in the rough, to be honest, because it was just such a gripping game. I really, really enjoyed the story in this game of Deacon St. John in his quest to find his wife and just figure out exactly what happened to her. And I really wanted them to reunite with the hope that she may still be alive out there. And it was just a really great story to just see that unfold, as well as all the other stories when you meet all the other camps and just explore and interact with other people in the world of Days Gone. It was just fantastic. I really enjoyed just driving around on my motorbike. It was kind of a mixture of like Mad Max's driving vehicle exploration with The Last of Us sort of zombiness and sort of crouched, sort of cover-based sort of shooting. So it was kind of like Uncharted in a way, in that it borrowed a lot of elements from other games, and while it didn't really do anything particularly new, it did all of those little bits and pieces really well to make a really cool and fun package. And I'm definitely looking forward to the sequel. It's just a fun game, and they've really updated it as it's gone on, so the game's a lot better now performance-wise, and there's loads of other new modes that you can do and these other challenges that you can do, so it's definitely worth playing, because experiencing a horde in this game where just loads of zombies are coming at you is just so much fun, especially when you're just this one-man army taking like thousands of these fuckers down. Class. Number 5. Horizon Zero Dawn. So Sony seem to have open world on their mind a lot this generation, as most of the exclusives were single player open world action adventure games, and Horizon for me is perhaps the best of its kind. This game is just brilliant from start to finish. It's just such a cool world to explore, and the combat in this game, you play as Aloy, this sort of hunter gatherer sort of woman who doesn't really have any technology, so to speak of, so all her weapons are quite primitive. You're armed pretty much with a bow and various different arrows that you can use to take down these strange robotic animal creatures. So you'll get like giraffe looking ones, big birds, raptor looking ones, wolves, bulls, all sorts of creatures, you name it, you'll probably come up against it. And it's just so much fun. Each battle was just so intense, so cool, and just so much fun to just take down the creature using your wits, and your environment and your weapons that you had to hand. And it was just so much fun to explore this world. I really got invested in this game, this story, these characters, and it was one of the first games where I completed an open world game without ever once using fast travel. So I would just walk to whatever location I needed to get to, because it was just so much fun just exploring this environment, walking around, crawling through the grass, just seeing what creatures would lie before me and just deciding whether to take them out or just try and sneak past them because I'm trying to get somewhere. And most times I would often just find myself getting sidetracked and uncovering something completely different. I think at one point I ended up stumbling upon sort of the end area and I couldn't quite get there, but I spent ages trying to climb all the way up it. It's just so much fun. The combat was just brilliant. It was really satisfying just taking down all the creatures, especially some of the really bigger ones that you just thought, fuck. It was kind of Shadow of the Colossus in a way. But it's just great. It's fantastic, and the sequel is coming to PS5 and PS4, so everyone can play it. Just pure brilliance. This game is just excellent. I've only played it once, but my god, it was just so much fun. I always meant to go back and do it on New Game Plus, but you know what? I think I might do it just before the second game comes out, playing it on PS5 with all the enhanced settings. Oh, it's gonna be amazing, isn't it? Buy this game, it's brilliant. Number 4. Ghost of Tsushima. Now, this only came out in 2020, so it's one of the newest games on this list, and maybe that's why it's a bit higher than some of the others, because it's more fresh in my mind. But I had such a blast playing this game. I was a huge fan of the Tenchu series back on the PS1 and PS2 days, and I have been longing for a ninja sort of samurai game set in ancient Japan for such a long time now. So when Ghost of Tsushima was announced, even though it was a samurai focused game, I was still really excited for it. And when I finally got to sit down and play it, it blew past all of my expectations. So while Horizon may technically be the better game, I think this one just edges it out because it's just so much fun. There's just so much to do in this game, and they've recently added multiplayer to it. That's apparently really good. I'm yet to check it out myself. But for what I played from the single player game, it's just brilliant. There's so many different moves you can do. You can play as the stealthy sort of ghost, the dishonourable sort of version where you kill people from behind, or you can play as the samurai and do loads of standoffs. It's just so cool. It's so much fun. The duels in this game and the combat is just so meaty, so weighty. It just feels so good. There's about 4 different stances, maybe 5. I'm not going to say that. To change your combat, and it's the way you deal with different enemies. So like a shield one will have a different stance for you to take down and get the shield. Spear enemies also have different moves. So it kind of changes the combat on the fly because you have to switch stance for each enemy. So it always keeps it interesting because you always have to deal with enemies enemies in different ways, and it's a beautiful game as well. It's so atmospheric, and just the colours in this game are just really vibrant, and it's just really cool just jumping on your horse and just wandering around the environment. This game is huge. The map is just epically big, and there's just so many different things to do in the map that it will just take you ages. I spent upwards of 50 plus hours on this game to platinum it, and I had a blast doing everything. Even the slightest, smallest, simplest side quests were fun, other than those ones where you had to walk around with that old lady. They were a bit dull, but other than that, it was just fantastic. You get everything you would want from a Tenchu game in this game, so if you're a fan of those games, please check this out. You won't be disappointed, because this is just perfect. So much fun, and that's what games should all be about, fun. Number 3, Sonic Mania. So, what you probably won't know from my channel is that I'm a huge Sonic fan, and I haven't really put out much Sonic content of late, because I am saving all of my ideas for Sonic content for next year, because next year will be the month of Sonic and Sonic's anniversary, so I want to celebrate it in style then. So that's why you haven't seen much Sonic content on my channel at the moment, but I love this Blue Blur. It's just such a cool game, and it was one of the reasons why I fell in love with gaming back in the 90s when I first played it on my Sega Mega Drive. And after completing Sonic 3 and Knuckles, I was always left waiting for that next brilliant 2D Sonic experience, and the advanced games and Sonic 4 just never really filled that void. So in comes Sonic Mania out of nowhere to play like a spiritual successor to those games, and to imagine if it was on the Sega Saturn with a bit more advanced hardware to give it that bit of a boost. And Sonic Mania is just fantastic. It's a pure love letter to Sonic fans, old and new. And it's just so much fun seeing all those classic zones get reimagined. And there's just so many highlights, from the Beam Machine boss fight to just all the different locations you go to, and all the fun, cool little set pieces and bosses. The bosses in this game are some of the best in any Sonic game, and it's just so much fun. I had a real blast with this, and I'm so happy that they made it. A game made by fans, for fans. That's how you do it, Sega. Just one of the best Sonic games ever made, and I'm just so happy that it came out. It's just so much fun. Number 2, just missing out on the top spot for best PS4 game, is Marvel Spider-Man. So, as well as Sonic, I am a huge fan of Spider-Man, and for me, Spider-Man 1 on PS1 was the best Spider-Man game ever made. That was until Spider-Man on PS4 came out and showed me how it's really done, because this game really does make you feel like you're Spider-Man, and it's just such a cool game. It's kind of almost like a fourth Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, because the story is just so good. It stars an older, more experienced Peter Parker who's been doing Spider-Man for a few years now, so he's already fought some of the villains before, and it picks up as he's taking down the Kingpin, but it's not long before new villains arise and he ends up fighting the Sinister Six. This game is just so much fun. The controls, the web slinging through the city, it's all just really well done, and Spider-Man's powers and all these little gadgets that he can do are just really fun. And yeah, the combat may be a bit like Batman Arkham games, but it's great, and it works much better here because it really does work well with Spider-Man's agility to explain why he can move around the place. And it was one of the only games on PS4 that actually made me cry with its ending. Jeez, it was so emotional. And the number 1 best PS4 game this generation is The Last of Us Remastered. What? You weren't thinking I'd put part 2 on this list, were you? For me, Last of Us Remastered is the greatest game that has ever been released on PS4. And even though it is just a remaster of the PS3 original, I still had to put this as number 1, because this is the game I have spent the most time on. Hell, Sony even told me that when they sent me some email telling me how long I'd played this thing. And it's just a fantastic game that I always enjoy playing. The story is fantastic, the characters and just everything about this game is just perfect in my opinion. I just love it. Naughty Dog just got everything right. This was their magnum opus. This was their greatest achievement, and they will never top this. The sequel just didn't live up to this game at all, and this remastered version just made the original game so much better. It made it 60 frames per second, and I can never go back to that PS3 version now because it's just so slow and smudgy as hell. But the remastered one is just perfect, and it still looks better than a lot of PS4 games, and that's just a testament to show you how great and how much this was just a perfect game on the PS3. It's just brilliant. The story is just so gripping. The story of Joel and Ellie as they journey across the US to try and find the Fireflies to give them the cure for this disease that has outbreak, and it's just a perfect little tale. It's a story of just two characters getting to know each other throughout the course of the game's year, and it's just brilliant. The gameplay is just fantastic. I love the combat. I love how brutal it is, and just how you really feel each punch when Joel swings his fists at people. And the gunplay as well is just fantastic. I really love it. It's just such a brilliant game, and it's why I dedicated a whole month of 2020 to this game on my channel, because it's just fantastic. It's a masterpiece, and if you want me to explain in more detail, I've got a 5+ hour review of this game on my channel somewhere, so check that out. But for my money, this is the best PS4 game. The online multiplayer as well is just brilliant. I've spent so much time on that. It's just the complete package. It's the perfect game in my opinion, and it's the greatest game ever made as well for me. So it had to be number one, didn't it? So, like, dislike, agree, disagree with this video, let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. This has been my top 25 PS4 games of the generation. What are yours? Let me know.